Hello, and welcome to Comics on the Rise, a investigation of the worldwide rise of comics and graphic novels. I'm Heidi MacDonald. I'm the editor-in-chief at The Beat at comicsbeat.com. I'm also a contributing editor at Publishers Weekly, whose offices I'm speaking to you from today. I'm excited to have such an amazing panel with us today from around the world of comics. So we have, let's see, we have Luis Martinez, the editorial director of Norma Editorial, which is one of the leading Spanish graphic novel publishers. And they have been publishing original Spanish comics and American comics and manga for many years. We also have Dr. Joachim Kaps, who is the founder of Ultraverse, a German publisher that specializes in manga with such titles as Solo Leveling, My Reincarnation as Slime, and so on. And we also have David Saylor, the Senior Vice President of Graphics and Creative at Scholastic, which is the biggest comics publisher in the US and the home to Dogman, Raina Telgemeier, and other household names. And finally, we have Doug Headline, who is a editor at Dupuis, where he runs the Air Noir imprint, and he works on projects in both comics and media. And Dupuis is one of the great fabled houses of graphic novels in France, with Lucky Luke, the Smurfs, and Gaston, and so many others. So thank you so much for joining us today, everyone, and excited to dive into this look at global graphic novel publishing. So just to get a little visual of this, we have a couple of slides prepared to show the three great markets for comics around the world: the US market, the Franco-Belgian market, and the Japanese market. So if we could see the slides, these are just quickly to show you the growth. Here's the Japanese market. And, I'm not going to drill down on these too much, but as you can see, getting bigger. They are growing from 2014 to 2023. You can see the growth there. And then in the next slide, we have, I believe this is the French market. Oh, no, that was the French market. Pardon me. That was the French market. So now we have the Japanese market, if we can see that. Or this is the US market. Again, these are the figures from ICV2. We could see the growth. I mean, post-pandemic, there's a little bit of a dip, but things are again on the rise in 2024. So incredible growth, almost doubling over the past decade. And then finally, we have a look at the Japanese market, just a snapshot. Again, not going to drill down on these figures too much, but we see the bars growing, although we do see the print bar going down a little bit in Japan, where digital has really become the way more and more people read their comics. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about these trends with this panel. So just for all of you, I'd like to get an idea of the trajectory of your individual markets over the last few years. We know that the pandemic was great for reading, but where are we at now? And, Luis, let's start with you, because I know you brought a visual too, just to show us. So.
Yes, of course. I'm really pleased to be with all of you. And I just brought a slide just to, as Heidi did, just to get a visual. Like in Spain, in all countries, there was a huge increase in reading during the pandemics, and now it has stabilized. But there you have. This slide is from the Publishers Association in Spain, and it shows the reading habits in Spain. As you can see, most of the people read books. We have a 70% of the population that read books, but the fastest growing category is the comic book one. We have a 13.2% of the population over the age of 14 declaring themselves to be comic readers, and it's at 2.4 percentage points more than a year ago. So there is a lot of interest, and it's growing. In our case, we have increased the number of publications in the recent years because we have also created a children's and young adult imprint, and we have added many titles to the catalog to reach a younger segment of readers. We are currently second in terms of comics published. We publish 550 comic books per year, behind Panini. Panini has Marvel and DC. They have the superhero market. And we publish European comics, BD, we publish US comics, we publish middle grade and young adult, and we publish a lot of manga. Half of our publications are manga. And we are really optimistic about the reading habits. We have more or less like 4 million readers, comic book readers in Spain that turn out to be in numbers of figures of turnover of 130 millions of euros in turnover, and we are increasing. So we are optimistic. I think that the problem is going to be, we can talk about it later, and my colleagues will agree about the challenges are going to be the increasing production costs for and to maintain a retail price to to don't have our sales to decline.
Yes, Doug, I know you can talk about the French market. You also bought like a snapshot that shows.
Yes, certainly. The French market is let's say, a little on the decline compared to the extreme highs, which were attained during the COVID and post-COVID periods. I mean, the last 3 years we have seen a slight loss. I won't say it's a major loss, but I mean a few percent at most. But we still have very strong sales even in years in which we don't have a new Asterix, which, as everyone knows, is the leading title in comics in France. It's about 2 million copies of an Asterix book when it comes out that are sold in the first few months. And then this past year, it still sold about 150,000 copies, although it was not a new book. There's an Asterix every 2 years. So we have sales of several types of books in the top 10 from last year, and that shows that the market is very, very vigorous, very buoyant. We have almost 300,000 copies of the top seller, which is Mortel Adèle, a series which has 4 titles in the top 10, which is for younger readers, of course. But we also have graphic novels like L'Arabe du Futur or the adaptation of The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which was done by Emmanuel Arsenet. Those are books that sold more than 200,000 copies, which is a lot. And something even more striking is that a graphic novel for adults, I mean, for really cultivated readers, which is the story of Jerusalem, of course, a topical subject, sold over 150,000 copies in its first year, and it sold again about 80,000 this year, I think, so far. So these are books that really can carry our market into different directions. We have a readership in France, which is very varied. We have the younger readers, of course, who will still be buying the first read books, and then we have an adult audience which is growing all the time, which helps keep the market afloat, and hopefully will keep it growing too. It's a chance that we can be able to reach out to so many different readers and different age groups too, and it helps the market stay afloat, and the general figures are rather good, I'd say, at this moment.
Amazing. Awesome. It's great to see, like, the route, like adult bestsellers. They're very interesting. David, it's a little different for you, aimed at children. No Cormac McCarthy at Scholastic, but yeah, let's talk a little bit about Scholastic Graphics and what's going on there.
Yeah, well, there's been a steady growth over the years, and Graphics was founded in 2005, and our first publication was Bone by Jeff Smith. And over the past 20 years, obviously, we've seen enormous growth from when basically there was no market for children's graphic novels to suddenly a market that is basically dominating the middle grade space in United States publishing. The new release of a Dave Pilkey book is an event, and it sells millions of copies. Including a lot of other, incredible series that we're doing, like The I Survived and Babysitter's Club and Wings of Fire, and so graphics publishing has basically become not only mainstream, but it's sort of leading the charge in terms of a lot of sales in children's books at this time. And so it's been fascinating to see that trajectory over 20 years, from when there was no market to now suddenly having a very robust market, to the point where basically 1 out of every 2 graphic novels sold in the United States is a graphics book, is a children's graphics title. So, that's astonishing, because that was certainly not the case 20 years ago. And we're going to try and continue the trajectory as we go into publishing manga, which is obviously something that is dominated by mostly teen and young adult and adult publishing from, Kodansha, Yen, and Viz. But hopefully what I want to do with graphics is create a space for middle grade and younger graphic novels, manga for kids that is fills that hunger and that need for younger kids being able to read manga.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of manga, our final speaker here, Joachim, you are a manga publisher. Tell us about the Ultraverse and where it's at.
Yeah, I'm a manga publisher today. My history is closer to David, as you might guess, because in my earlier years, I was publisher of Bone in Germany 2 times, back at Carlsen and Tokyo Pop. But yes, the last 8 years mainly have been for me a manga adventure. We see here the development of the market. Within 10 years, the market in Germany more or less has tripled if we count together comics and manga and webtoon. And traditionally, Germany never has been an easy market for comics. 30 years ago when I started the industry, but as in the other countries, it has developed a lot thanks to Corona now. We had steady growth before, but very slow. And then everything exploded within the last 3 to 4 years. For Ultraverse, this was kind of lucky because we just founded a company in 2017 after my adventures with other publishers. And for us, as we are focusing on manga and webtoon, this was a huge boom. We are the third biggest publisher of comics now already in the competition with houses that have a lot of tradition. What's very unique about Germany is that if we're talking about sales in bookstores, we're really mainly talking about manga. If you look at the numbers, more than 80% of comics that are sold in bookstores are manga and or webtoon. So we still have to catch up with classical comics, not only with Bone, but also with the wonderful French bande dessinée. Germany is behind that. What we have at the moment is more or less a flat market. So we are able to keep more or less the size that has grown during Corona. But I have to emphasize that this is partly bought by higher prices. So the number of copies is dropping a little bit more, prices are rising, which is nothing I'm very amused of because I'm always thinking about young readers as David. And I think we have to keep in mind that comics should not become a too expensive medium because this is hard for kids to enter then. Maybe so far, what a German situation.
Right, right. So we kind of see some similar stories, the pandemic peak and then kind of things finding a new normal, but also now the rise of production prices. Do you find just in reaching your audience, I mean, is the audience changing a little bit? I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more about the rise of manga, obviously, but for more traditional comics, do you find that the audience is changing between adults or kids? And, what are they looking for right now? How do you find material that the audience wants to read? Luis.
Yeah, I think the main titles, I think, are the same for the traditional comic book readers. I have to agree with Doug. For example, for us, La Route, The Road, has been a really great success. I think it's been a greater success everywhere. And the European, for example, we have a European comic book line that we publish 100 books per year. And the main titles are the Black Sad, for example, are the Corto Maltese, but the ones that are the Spanish scriptwriter and Spanish drawer doing. And also the young adult is really selling really well. But what I think is changing is that people really are not going for series. In Spain, they prefer one shots and they prefer compilations, even if they have to pay a little more, like in the traditional market. In manga, it's it's really different. Manga, they do series. I don't know One Piece, how many volumes there are, but for us, for example, we publish the Jujutsu Kaisen, we publish Dan Da Dan, we publish Kimetsu no Yaiba. They are long series, and they keep buying them. And I think also the public is looking for Korean comics that are slightly different from manga because they come from the webtoon world and they are being readapted in another format, and they are in color. And now they are the big players. And the manga, so we have the manga, we have the manhwa, and the manga. So, for example, our manga line is now our Asian line because we publish comic books from China, Korea, and Japan.
Amazing. Doug, how about your audience? What are they looking for?
Well, I think the most striking phenomenon that we've been able to identify these past few years is that we are catching a massive group of readers who would otherwise not read comics on some titles, not a lot, but each year there are about 3 to 6 books that really are reach out much more than to the traditional comic audience. So it means that these are people who usually will read essays, novels, and all sorts of non-fiction books, and the subject matter of the book will bring them to reading comics. That doesn't mean they will read a lot of comics, but that means that they will regularly look at what's coming out of the publishers. And I mean, for instance, Dupuis is a part of Media Participations, which is a big group of over 100 imprints, which also carries Dargaud and Lombard, which are 2 big comic publishing houses. Dargaud has had an immense success with World Without End, which is still in the top sellers 2 years after its publication. And that's because it has reached out. The book has, with its ecological themes, has reached out to an audience that would normally not be reading comics. So we have that. And then the rest is like, you have the Franco-Belgian readers of several ages. The older ones are still buying on and on the same titles, like Luke, Tintin, and so on, and Asterix and Gaston Lagaffe. And it's like the bonus because the title has been there for 70 years, like with Batman and Superman in the States. We have the Franco-Belgian readers, but we also have the comic book readers, the comics, US comics readers, which are mostly read only comics, and the manga readers, which mostly read only manga. There's no real crossovers, which means we have sort of 3 separate markets. And one of them, the Franco-Belgian, can go, skyrocket to figures that are really unthinkable in normal times. I'm talking about 250,000 copies for a book in its first year of a 30-euro book. So that's, it's like a very big figure. That's what we have.
I want to ask you too, why do you think The Road landed so well? Why do you think that's such a hit? I mean, is it just that Larsenet is an incredibly genius cartoonist, or?
It's also because the novel and the film were already very well known by readers, and it's sort of, it's an accident. Sometimes something strikes, just the right time, at the right time, the right place, and that's this vision of a dystopia, which is not very far from our world. I assume strikes something in readers' hearts or brains.
No comment. David, what about your readers? They're still figuring things out a lot of times. So what do you?
They are. I think their kids are still figuring things out. So one big category that continues to work for us are what we call slice of life, or basically, how middle school kids get through the day and how they deal with friendship, how they deal with getting angry, how they deal with not succeeding in some way, or dealing with problems at home. And so slice of life is very big. But in addition, series publishing is still very strong, and comforting sort of everyday stories like the Babysitters Clubs are still hugely popular. Some fantasy series like Amulet is enormous. Wings of Fire, all about dragons, are enormously popular and continue to be popular in the US. And then humor is probably the other huge category, I would say, and that's sort of dominated by Dave Pilkey, but there's Investigators and there's other books that fit into that. I think another sort of a group that's, or an idea that's coming up as Warriors is becoming a big hit in the US. And I think animal adventure stories are gonna rise to the forefront, that are not dragons, but they're other animals. So, but it's usually the same tried and true topics that kids want to read about. They want to read about themselves and identify with characters in the books, or they want to be transported to another world and they want to read book 1 and book 2 and book 3 and book 4 and just keep going in that world because it's a very safe, comforting space for them.
Yeah. And then by the time they've grown up through them, hopefully there are new readers to move through it, right?
Yes, onto adult books, onto the road. They're going to graduate to the road.
Yes, you've read Dog Man. Now here's the road.
Now it's time for the road. Yep.
Joaquin, what about your readers? Are you know, I mean, in manhwa, obviously Korean comics are coming in hot. You know, what are they looking for?
I think if we're talking about the influence of Webtoon, I think that's in line with what Doug said before, that we can see in that field that a huge part of the growth is coming by totally new readers who were not into comics at all before. And that's the case for a lot of the readers of Korean manhwa. They entered through in the pandemic via the apps. So reading apps, I think, are a matter that opened a lot of doors during that time, coming from Japan and from Korea. And it's kind of interesting to see that young people had the chance to read more or less the complete story completely for free in the web on one of the apps, or for nearly nothing, but they still want to collect. So for us this year, Solo Leveling was killing everything. We made more revenue with Solo Leveling than One Piece with its over 100 volumes in spring. This is setting a trend. Actually, if you would have asked me some years ago, I would have said that's impossible. So, and there are a lot of people who don't even know or don't think in categories like manga or webtoon or comic anymore. We had a lot of talks on conventions where people said, oh, manga's in color now. That's interesting. So that's another point. In the early years of manga, everything needed to be black and white, exactly as in Japan. These new readers, they don't care about. They're just looking for good entertainment. And another factor that we see in the German market more and more, some of the best-selling comics outside of manga are comics which have a connection to influencers from social media, YouTube stars, whatever, who connect to young artists and writers and build up brands totally out of what the classical publishers have done before. And if you look at the top sellers of the last year in classic comics, I think the top 10 are more or less coming from that field. So they are bringing in a lot of young people who follow them online and who are open for the medium. And the third factor, I think, which is good sign for the future, when I was a kid, reading comics was really something bad and dirty. And so parents didn't like it. And this definitely, and I think thanks to works like guys like David and many others, has changed over the last year. So the modern parents are open to the world of comics in any form. And I think that's a huge chance for all of us, because we need to keep in mind it's nice that sophisticated arty stuff is getting more popular, but at the same time, our future always will depend on bringing in young ones again and again and again and again. So thanks, David. You're taking care for America. And I hope you have more influence even more than on Europe on the long run with what you're doing. But Adele is a good example too, so I don't want to forget that.
Yeah. You know, actually, that brings me to something I wanted to ask you, Joaquin. I mean, obviously, manga from Japan is what is considered authentic, has a huge readership. We're starting to see Korean comics like Solo Leveling. But do you think that you'll ever see, you know, like European manga, or, you know, manga created by German cartoonists? Do you think that we'll ever see that become, you know, hugely popular? Because there's, I mean, obviously manga is being created by all kinds of people everywhere, manga format. There's even an argument about what to call it. So do you think we'll see that?
It's really nice of you that you asked that question to me, because I'm trying to do manga with local artists since the beginning. Back in the times at Carlsen, when we published the first European magazines with Banzai and Daisuke, really, really long ago, when nobody knew who Naruto was, we took Japanese comics and in the magazine, there was always one German artist combined to that. And back then, it was already a huge experience, but we were a little bit too early maybe back then. At the actual stage of the develop of the market, and I think I'm in line even with my friends in Asia, manga has a little bit of problem at the moment in trying to not to follow the mistake American superheroes have done before, which were getting too much otaku, because everybody is looking on the big effects on online. And so big clicks, quick clicks, which not necessarily is always the best basis for a solid story. So we see a lot of titles coming up very quick and then going down very quick too over the last 2-3 years, because the industry is kind of hyped. Everybody wants to do more, wants to be highly accessible. Nobody takes the time to develop concepts. And we see a chance for Europe here indeed. And together with 3 other companies, we started a little adventure, which is bringing me back to my roots. So we're doing this pan-European manga magazine called Manga Isho together with France, Italy, and Spain. And we try to give young talents from all over Europe a chance to be published in 4 different languages in 4 different markets. And so 3 volumes are out of the market, on the market now. We are all satisfied with the results so far. And everybody who's involved in that believes that the combination of European culture, our background, and the, let's say, the language of manga is a huge chance to make things even bigger. Because honestly, we have cultural gaps between Europe and Japan and Korea. Take the school system, something like that. For young people, it's sometimes hard to understand why are they wearing uniforms and why are people not approaching each other with their free names and stuff like that. And here's a chance to make it more open without saying that something is wrong with Japanese manga or Korean manga. But I think it's time that all the young talents that grew up with the visual language of manga get a chance to express themselves now. And I'm quite sure we will see a big hit within the next 5 years. Maybe for my retirement would be nice.
Fascinating. Yeah. Luis, you have also seen the rise of manga in the Spanish market. I mean, what's been the impact of this? What both as readers and on the business? So.
Well, for us, we've been publishing manga since the 90s in Norma, because the CEO from Norma, Oscar Valiente, he was how do you cancel an early adopter,
Right.
an early adopter at that time.
For him, that's
okay.
That's great.
So we've been there all the time, and he's one of the person that has the most knowledge of manga in Spain in the last 30 years. So we've always been there. And now, when the boom arrived, like 10 years ago, we already had the big licenses. We have published Akira, we have published Death Note, and then we have the main licenses now. I just told Dan Dan, Jujutsu Kaisen, Korean Solo Leveling, and so for us it's normal, because 250 titles per year from Norma Editorial are manga. So it's nothing new. But in Spain it's nothing new, because in the 90s, the Spanish TV started purchasing anime, a lot of anime. Well, I think in most of the countries, the Dragon Ball, Ranma, Dr. Slump, Heidi. So the Spanish market has been really open to Japanese culture in the last 30 days. But now the anime has arrived to the streaming platforms in a really massive way. And in the pandemics, I think one of my colleagues has a term for that. They call the Corona otakus, because there are a lot of kids that they stayed home and watch a lot of anime, and they wanted the manga. So yeah, for us, it was not a surprise. It was a bit of a surprise, like for everybody, but I think we were prepared, and it's been really good for us.
Well, great. It's good. Good that to have someone who had the vision to see, because there certainly was, we're hearing so many interesting things like, oh, it's hard to sell children's comics. Oh, it's hard to sell manga. And things have certainly changed, which is why comics are on the rise. David, you're trying to bring manga for younger readers in at Scholastic, and we do know that children's comics around the world do not always adhere to what we call American standards. So sometimes there's some problems. But yeah, what's been the trajectory of your manga publishing efforts?
Well, we pretty much started, I guess, about a year ago when we launched with Unico by Osamu Tezuka, which is basically a sort of a reimagining of the original manga by Osamu Tezuka by an American writer, Samuel Satin, and a Japanese artist duo, Guri Hiro. And so we just published actually the second book, which is just out now, and then there are 6 more books to come, which will hopefully complete the sort of the new awakening version of Unico. And we published it in full color. It reads in the Western style, which is how Osamu Tezuka actually created the original manga. So we're following his template. And so that confused some people, but basically it's a great adventure story. And in sort of another strand of publishing, we're also publishing original Japanese manga that's very kid-friendly. And this was our first manga, Hikaru in the Light, that we published just back in March, I believe. And another one called Mecha Ude. And as we've discovered, finding manga that is really kid-friendly is difficult. There isn't a huge pipeline of children's manga that's ready to go, as everyone probably knows. And it's partly because the Japanese children's market is very, very different from the American market. In the American market, we're very used to publishing very specific kinds of books for each age group. And so middle grade or middle school is a very big category that we're always publishing into. And because there are millions of students, there's a big market for that. And so finding material from Japan has been really tricky. Happily, we're working with a really great scout, Tebeyoki, who's finding some amazing things for us. But also, I think we have to do other interesting things. And the next thing that we're launching is a Captain Underpants manga, which is basically Dave Pilkey, who lives in Japan, is writing his Captain Underpants prose books and doing them as a graphic novel, a manga, with Motojiro, who's the Japanese artist. And they've collaborated on this spectacular, really, really fun manga for kids. So I think we're trying it from a lot of different paths to try and sort of bring the excitement of manga, which is, undoubtedly, it's an amazing part of what the storytelling of manga and the manga creators is so amazing and so different from American storytelling, that I think that we need to bring that excitement, that manga, for kids, to a new generation of younger kid readers who will then go on to read, Chainsaw Man and a lot of other things that are out there that are available for them, but hopefully feed that, again, feeding sort of kids what they want at a younger age, and then have them move on to even more sophisticated manga.
Yeah. Well, Captain Underpants and manga, this could be the chocolate and
could
peanut
be big,
right? This could be
could be big.
Man. The great combo. Doug, what are you seeing about how the rise of manga has impacted the French market?
Well, it's forced most publishers, at least most major publishers, to diversify and sort of as did Dupuis and many others. We opened a branch or an imprint or something that would allow traditional publishers to welcome mangas among the ranks of their publications. And so everybody has got some manga in their catalog now. It's a fairly, it's like a common thing now. But I want to go back just for a bit to the question of readership, which is not the same. I mean, it's the thing we are seeing is really a fragmentation of the audience and the readership, because we have like more and more niche content. I mean, even in the manga, there are manga readers that are not reading more than one or two types of mangas, whereas there are many. We have mangas that are, as you know, are designed for the feminine audience. We have mangas that are designed for younger or older readers, all that sort of stuff. And the thing that's a bit disturbing is that there is no overlap between many categories, as it is with US comics, Franco-Belgian, and manga. The readers read one type of thing only, and that's the markets sort of coexist. They live one besides the other, and they don't mingle that much. So that's a bit alarming in that sense, that I can't share a totally optimistic vision of where we're going. It's just that people are getting more and more isolated in the way they approach reading. That's a problem. Plus, we have a 15% of the population that does not read in France, that does not read at all, not even a newspaper or whatever, which is probably a comparable figure in other European countries. I don't know for the States, but that's certainly not a very pleasant idea. So the fact that we have imported a part of traditional Japanese culture with the mangas is good, but it's also detrimental to the rest of what we can, what we Westerners can produce. I mean, we've not expanded our readership. We've just taken away a part of our readership that probably would have read Western comics, and now they're only reading manga. You see?
Yeah, well, we have quite a few questions from the audience, and interestingly enough, a lot of them are on that very topic. So I guess I'm going to try to. We have a question from Eric Reynolds. I believe that's from Fantagraphics. Eric Reynolds and Lydia Nguyen from Abrams. But they're both kind of asking somewhat similar questions. Lydia says, knowing that manga and graphic novel readers are usually very separate demographics, do you see the adult graphic novel market growing in a way that embraces both readerships, as more comics fans and cartoonists who grew up reading YA and middle grade graphic novels and manga enter adulthood? So I guess to boil the question down, it really is, like, as we've been saying, they're so separate, but how can we bring these audiences together, or is there a way? Whoever wants to tackle that one.
I mean, I'll just jump in and say I think the way to do that is through doing more manga and more variety of manga for kids, because kids will read a lot of different things, and it's not as segmented a market as I think as kids get older and they sort of get on this tunnel path of what they're reading. So I think it's up to publishers. We need to create more material for kids that crosses boundaries, that crosses genres, that offers them something that they're just going to find really enjoyable. And so for me, I feel like that's my task, is that I need to start breaking down some of those borders, because I think that as publishers, sometimes we get stuck in thinking, well, this is for this reader and this is for that reader. And I tend to think that kids and readers in general are actually more broad-minded than that at the end of the day. And so it's up to me to create the material that's going to bring all of those things together for them, and to open up maybe or enlarge their tastes for certain books or for categories of books.
I mean, we are seeing, for instance, webtoons featuring like DC characters and Marvel characters, and who knows, maybe they'll enjoy it so much they'll say, hey, I might like The Dark Knight. Luis, the question from Eric Reynolds is a little different. Do you find that all your adult or literary graphic novels are competing for physical shelf space in Europe with manga, manhwa, and YA, or are they each completely different categories, meaning different buyers in different sections in bookstores? Again, talking about this divide.
I think it depends in the bookstores. For example, in Spain, we have 200 specialized comic book stores, and there you can find the manga section, you can find the European comic section and the USA section. I think that the battle is in the general bookstores, no? More or less. Yeah, I don't know. We are speaking like how to connect, no, all the genres, and if readers are jumping from one genre to another, but I think it will be hard in the future. I don't know if the question is in this spirit, how to connect everything, or if everything is taking a place. I know, for example, that Doug told that Doug, in your industry, like manga has taken over the European BD readers?
Taken over, not really, but it's going to be, let's say, half of the market of comics overall.
No.
Now it's a bit less, it's 45%, something like that. But
Yeah.
you have to consider that in France only, we have about, I think it's over 3,000 bookshops that overall. Some and a good portion of these are specialized in bande dessinée or have very large bande dessinée or comics manga shelves. So they will use a lot of the space to showcase the comics in general, including the mangas. They have separate manga sections, which can be huge, of course, because there's a huge readership. But they also will have a lot of shelf space for graphic novels, for comics, US comics, and so on.
I think that the difference, for example, from your market and my market, is that your market has a really great industry in creating your own comic books.
Exactly.
So for us, manga has expanded the market. Because
when we do something like this, which you know well, since you
I know well.
It's a 180-page book. It's 4 years of the creator's time, and of course, this calls for a lot of investment and
that's it.
Support for the creators. We have the chance of having a robust market and a lot of, as I said, a wide readership of all sorts of readers. So that helps a strong economy for the overall comics industry in France. That's why we've gotten to be the sort of focal point in Europe for the creation of comics. I mean, the Spanish artists come to France, the Italian artists come to France, the South Americans, some British, some the US more rarely, because they also bring in some European creators to do the US comics. But in Europe, France is really the strong point, because I mean, there's almost no comic creation in Germany. I'm sorry, Joachim, it's not been a strong point of Germany for decades. But in Spain, you have incredible artists and not enough.
We also do our own production, but the market in France is really much bigger. So for us, it's not that the manga is taking over the other genres, but I think it's expanding. For example, we have been publishing 100 BD from you, for example, from Dupuis, from Dargaud, from Lombard, from Delcourt, and from the French market. 100 BD comic books per year from over the last 10 years, and it's been stable. The sales. It's been stable and it's been increasing, but the manga is also increasing, and the US comic books has been increasing. So in Spain, the comic market has more space than in France, because we have more readers entering. So we have a space for everyone. And now the general bookstores, they only had one section that was comic book, and then you have everything. But now they have the manga, and now they have the graphic novel, and then they have the European line. So things are changing in the Spanish market and in the bookstores. So I don't think that they compete. I think that we get more readers to get access to comic books and to French comic books and to American comic books through manga, because they want to know what they are about. But mostly of them not. Mostly of them only read manga, but a lot of them expand to the other lines.
Mm-hmm. So as long as there is a certain like Venn diagram of the readers who are, open, let's say adventurous, there will be this crossover, basically. So, I want to talk. You mentioned the bookstores. Let's talk a little bit about. I want to get to some more questions, but just about physically selling comics. How is we saw in Japan that digital is hugely on the rise and actually is larger than the print comics market right now. What is the difference between physical sales and digital sales in your market? Anybody? Joaquin, wanna?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, but when we're looking at the numbers in Asia in general, not only Japan, Korea is even more extreme in the switch to digital. In Europe, I see a total different situation. In Germany, I can explain it because our politicians have been simply too lazy, so we don't have any functioning digital infrastructure. So it's not a lot of fun to read online here. When you go by a train from Hamburg to Cologne, you're losing connections 5, 6 times. So you stay to the book. Thanks, by the way, from the publishing industry to all the German politicians who decided not to build a functioning infrastructure. I'm not sure about the rest of Europe, but so the percentage of digital readers is more or less the percentage of people who are going for the classical ebooks, digital formats. So nearly no platforms in the German countries, at least. Young people are using American platforms, Korean platforms, Japanese platforms, but there's no platform business. And if we talk about ebooks, which I think is kind of a medium which will not survive because platform reading seems to be the future, and ebooks is still something like 4 to 5%. Actually, in my planning, I don't care too much about that part. So Germany is definitely a print market if it comes to comics. People want to collect, people want to take selfies in front of their collection. They like to carry heavy bags. I have no idea. So there's a lot that's working pro paper in our market. And I don't expect that this will rapidly change. So people announce that since decades, oh, digital will kill the book. I don't believe it will be the case, not in our section. I think it's a totally different thing. If you look at the number in Japan, you have to keep in mind they had a huge, massive magazine market. And it's more or less the magazine market that is replaced by digital reading, while the books are comparably stable. So, and I think this will be comparable in other markets. Yeah, people look online, try to get an idea what is there, and if they like something, yeah, they still want to switch to the book and have their collection and show it to their friends and all that stuff that makes reading fun.
I think that's a really great point, that in Japan, they do have the gigantic weekly manga magazines, and that is what you're saying is being replaced by digital. David, what are you seeing? I mean, you know, kids in the iPad, but yeah, what's digital? How's your digital?
I would say our market is overwhelmingly print. I mean, basically, because it's kids and, you know, teens, definitely it changes. But the ebook portion of our books is comparatively small, I would say. Almost all of it is print. And, you know, to Joaquin's, you know, point, I mean, I'm an optimist. I think a book is a perfect object. It's a perfect delivery system for information and for content and for art. And so I don't think it's going anywhere soon. And I think that, you know, knowing people and knowing kids, people like to collect things and have things and own things and compare things and show things to their friends, and it's part of their identity, like, you know, my bookshelf behind me. So it's I don't see it going away, because I think people like things. And if you see a kid who has their first book in their hands at a book fair, and you see the joy in their face when they're given a book of their own, you can't, that's irreplaceable. That feeling is irreplaceable.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all sitting in front of our books. So obviously we're adapters here. We have so many great questions. Here's a really interesting one from Maria Pantoja. Has the growing manga market in Europe opened up European publishers or audiences to investigating, reprinting, or publishing other international comics? For example, the growing comics industry in Southeast Asia, South America, etc. Is there any interest from European publishers in foreign markets other than East Asian works? Anybody want to take that on?
Yes, of course. We have been looking comic books from other countries. When we go to the Frankfurt Book Fair, there is a lot of more presence, for example, of Latino American editors in international book fairs. And we have published some books from Latin American authors, for example, and we are open to that. Why not? Why not? Another thing is to produce, for example, there are a lot of Latin American artists that are being produced in other countries. But I think that the question is referring to buy rights, no, from the Latin American, no?
Well, I believe, yes, you know, licensed publishing, I believe is what they're talking about. So
As for example, we published a manga, but we are looking into Korea, and we are starting publishing um, Chinese illustrated light novels. So we are always searching and always looking to see what is going to be the next big thing.
Mm,
And maybe the next big thing is Webtoon, and Webtoon can come from any country, and then readapting it in a physical edition, and then selling it in a physical edition. I think, Joachim, you will agree with me that, for example, solo leveling worked really well in Webtoon, but people read it in Webtoon, but they still buy the physical book, and will sell a lot of the physical book despite being published in digital.
yeah, absolutely. Another question, gee, I'm sure no one has any opinions on this. How do you rate the impact of AI on the comic world?
Well, I guess I would say it, of course, it will be available, but we know that it's bound to become a tool for some artists to help them with, creating their artwork, but not more than that, because you'll be able to do assembly line comics done entirely by AI, the same way Netflix and other platforms are, fabricating storylines that are used in their TV movies according to some recommendations by the AI, with a break at such and such a minute so that people can get up and go into their fridge or go into the toilet. And so that's all done by the AI, but it's pointless, because in the end the material will lack humanity, and it won't be original. When we are saying, like we said, we're interested in looking at what's going to be the next big thing. The next big thing is not going to be created by an AI that's only repeating stuff that it has ingested, which comes from humans, and it's just recycling things. So obviously it can't be a single creator of by itself of what's going to be the next big thing, or just simply a good, human created comic. Maybe a tool for some artists, yes, but not more than that.
Yeah. Anyone else on the AI?
I'm sure that out there, outside of the publishing industries, there are a lot of heads who want to produce comics by using AI. And I think we all can only hope that they will not succeed. So in the name of our artists, not that much in the name of of us as a publisher. So for example, in my private use, I'm doing a lot of music streaming, and I get more and more recommendations now by platforms by AI music. So it's happening already. So even if I click that away and try to tell the platform I don't want to hear that shit, I still get it in because there's a new TikTok hype or whatever that's pushing it. So I hope that Doug is right, that this will not be a danger, that we can shape it in a way that it's a useful tool for artists. And as long as AI is not able to understand that people have 5 fingers on their hands, which still is the best indicator for AI production, it's working. But on the other hand, I think we're all reading about the discussions of supercomputers, super intelligence, and all that. It's hard to project at the moment. Some people say I will kill us in 3 years anyway, then we don't need to care about comic production anymore. That's fine. Some people say there are limits. It's hard to project, but I think what was a problem in the whole process is that tech companies again simply stole creativity of artists and put it in their machines without even asking. And there was no single country worldwide, I think, that tried to prevent them to do that. We've seen that in other fields of culture before, and it led to the fact that artists need to find new ways to survive. So, for example, the music industry, everybody's complaining, oh, why are concerts so expensive these times? Why are they expensive? Because artists don't make money with records anymore, because they don't get nearly nothing from streaming. So we should think more about the effects of what we're doing. But for me as an old guy, it's easy to say that. So young people might look different on that.
They'll figure out. Well, we're almost out of time. Just very quickly, we mentioned some of the challenges. I mean, print costs, obviously paper costs, some of that, but What is the big goal in the next year for all of you? David. Oh, go ahead,
Oh, yeah.
Luis.
No, sorry. For us, I think for the Spanish market in general, is to create more industry. We have been publishing a lot of Spanish artists, a lot of Spanish comic books, but we have to still keep creating more industry. We have now the support of the government. We have a lot of grants that for this year, so it's been huge in Spain, and we have to keep going that way. And then there is the things about the rising production cost and to keep the retail prices to something that readers and new readers can afford. And I think that the effort is that we have a lot of books per year, comic books per year. I think in Spain is 5,000 now at this time. So I think that the effort and the battle is going to be in the marketing, in communication, and to keep aligned with the libraries so that we can reach our audiences.
Awesome. David?
Yeah, I think that we all want to keep reading affordable. And so I think it's going to be about cost, production, supply chains. Things are in disarray at the moment. And so I think our challenge is to make sure that we can keep creating and producing books that kids and adults can afford, and so that reading isn't, out of reach.
Absolutely. Doug?
Yes, I do agree with David. I think there's a whole question of the price of things, the price of keeping the books on the shelves when you have not sold them and not destroying them and stuff like that. It's a complicated situation, but I think our goal is to produce less, to sort of clear out a bit the market, and to promote each book, create it and promote it and try and sell it the best way we can. To have, like we have in France, 6,000 new books every year is really stupid. I mean, it gives a bad feeling to the booksellers who don't have the space to put those books in. Sometimes they don't even open the cardboard boxes that they get the books in. They just return them without opening them. There are too many books being produced. And by limiting the number of books, you can also invest better on each project and finance it better and promote it better. So I'd say reducing the number of books is essential at this point.
Joaquin?
I would agree to what Doug just said. Reducing the number of books might be one of the things we have to do in the local market. But the old problem is we have talks like that since decades, at least since I joined the industry. Nobody wants to be the first one. So congrats if you start to do that. Hopefully other will follow. But other than that, for us, really, this idea of international manga, I think this will be what will driving us in the next years. We want to give more talents a chance to get published. We want, especially in fields like kids manga, try to figure out, is there a European way to create content which is cool, but at the same time fitting to the experience of young European readers? And I do all that to make sure that in the end, maybe in 10 years, we have that panel again, and then I don't want to hear anymore that Doug can say, "Oh, sorry, Joachim, Germany doesn't have a good production." It's time to change that, I think. We have so many readers and talents. We should be able to create sellers too.
Yeah. Well, I think if there's one thing that this has proved and spoken about is that comics are an international language, and the characters that we read about in comics truly cross all boundaries from every country. And they just become part of our global heritage in so many ways, these great characters that we love so much. We have some awesome questions that we did not get to, so I apologize for that, but we are out of time. Obviously, so much more to talk about. We will be here maybe next year. Maybe we get to do this every year. That would be great. So Joaquim, Doug, Luis, David, thank you so much for joining us and talking about the global comics market. And everyone who tuned in today, thank you so much for coming. And let's go buy and read and make more comics.